secondary schools. Now, I, as the second speaker of the opposition, will first rebut all the arguments given by the first two speakers of the government and further strengthen our case today. Right, so now, first, the second speaker mentioned that parents cannot be guaranteed to provide education on sex. She also mentioned that due to religious beliefs, they would often skip out on several aspects of sex education. Now, ladies and gentlemen, members of the House, isn't that better for parents to actually teach sex education according to the laws of religions and their beliefs? Now, there are several things, for example, abstinence and whatnot. Most religions, actually, I think all religions actually say that you should not have sex before marriage, and yet the government kept enhancing and emphasizing on the fact that teens can actually be sexually active during this age group while still being safe about it. I am not sure as to why the government is actually contradicting with themselves, but for the ideas, I guess they will be explaining about that. Okay, now next. The second argument was sex is a part of life. Now, she said that having sex is a free right for teenagers. She also said that it is one of the ways to live a healthy life. There are many ways to live a healthy lifestyle while being sexually active. Now, members of the House, she is basically contradicting herself as the member of the government, saying that sex is a part of life, saying that it's free right, saying that it's healthy lifestyle while you can still be sexually active. And yet she talked about the increasing teen pregnancy rate in Malaysia. How is it that even possible? Now, even the government themselves, have implemented a law saying that having sex below the age of 21, is actually wrong in the age group. And now, you're somehow promulgating the act of intercourse itself. Shame on you for not knowing your own law. Right now, moving on to the first speaker of the government, she talked about providing a safe surrounding for protection. Sex education will provide a better way to expose about sex. Now, how about parents? As mentioned by my first speaker, parents are better educators. They are closer to their children. They know their children better. Now, why bother implementing such a sensitive and subjective subject when this topic can just be taught by parents themselves? Yes, you are.
Okay, you say it is against the law to have sex below 18. So why are people still doing it?
Alright, thank you. Now, one question, and that question is actually to you. Now, if indeed you said that moral studies, religious studies, have actually taught about sex, about abstinence and whatnot, saying that sex is wrong, and yet they are still doing it. Now, imagine if they actually put and they actually agree that sex education should be implemented in education systems in Malaysia. Wouldn't that mean that teen pregnancy rates would eventually increase? Thank you for the very marvelous reply, by the way. Right, so now, moving on to first again, she talked about regarding contraceptions and safe sex. Now, when students know the benefit of contraceptions and the idea of safe sex, the children would actually, they'll actually think that sex before marriage is encouraged. Now, I'll fully explain this in my argument. And also, she talked about teens are performing the act even without sex education, and further introducing it will help to cure sex problems. Now, these two are sexually contradicting. Again, I will further explain in my argument. Now, having debunked the argument, permit me to proceed with my first argument, also the opposite second, which is sex education incites curiosity of teenagers towards sexual exploration. Ladies and gentlemen, secondary school students are teenagers who are experiencing physiological and hormonal changes and are beginning to discover themselves. They are filled with curiosity and would question everything they see. Now, this is not bad. Rather, we should cultivate curiosity, but there is a limit to the extent on how we can question. I'll get to that in a bit. To actually talk about an issue like sex is quite intriguing, isn't it? This would cause the students to want to try and experiment everything they learned in that subject. It does not take a rocket scientist to realize where I am going with this. From being curious, they would like to explore what they have been taught in sex education. They would be what's the word they love to use? Yes, empowered. Now, trust me, by having sex education, students will be empowered to know well enough how to protect themselves, how to avoid pregnancy after having sexual intercourse, and sooner or later, they would realize that their parents would never find out about their sexual promiscuity. Because why? Because they will know how to hide the telltale signs of a sexually active person. Even the government cannot deny that it's part of human nature for students to feel curious and have intentions to try what has been taught to them through sex education. Moreover, they learn this subject with their friends, their peers in school. This will further instill thoughts of experimentation and exploration. Ever heard of peer influence, anyone? Now, I'm not saying that every student will want to try out everything they have learned, but the numbers might pale in comparison with those who actually shied away from sex. But those numbers are not mere numbers, members of the House. We are talking about young, impressionable teenagers who would have another reason to try something new with their friends. By making sex education compulsory, we are actually implying that it is okay to have sexual intercourse with someone else as argument, which is opposition third and last, which is how sex education as a standalone subject creates irrelevant expenditure. To create another standalone subject will only add up to already huge amount of money needed for our education system. Now, it is financial suicide in our honest opinion. We need to have syllabus, textbooks, workbooks, experts, qualified teachers, and other miscellaneous expenses in order to teach sex education as an exclusive subject. The amount of textbooks needed for students are mind-boggling because for starters, we have almost around 3,000 secondary schools in Malaysia. Now, multiply that with the enrollment of each school, we have almost 3 million secondary students in Malaysia. Now, you do the math, ladies and gentlemen. How about the cost to train the teachers? Like I said, we need qualified teachers to teach the subject, right? Since governments passed back to schools to teach sex education, they must have considered the amount of money needed to train new and existing teachers, so they would become experts in teaching a subject which is very subjective, as mentioned by my first. I am just scratching the surface here. There are lots to consider when we want to implement an educational program, and cost is right up there. I do not want sex education to be made compulsory, God forbid, but in the long run, falls short of its desired aspirations and be scrapped a few years later. Case in point, BPSMI, the teaching and learning of science and mathematics in English. The government spent billions of ringgit for it to be implemented across secondary schools all over Malaysia, and yet it's a race failure. All that money wasted because of improper planning. Do we want the same for sex education? From a financial angle, sex education must not be made compulsory because of the potential cost incurred. Yes, Mr. Kiwai.
Isn't that expenditure worth if you are preventing a high rate of teen pregnancy?
Alright, so she says that isn't the expenditure worth if you're actually decreasing the rate of pregnancy? How can you prove to me that sex education will further decrease the rate of pregnancy? Because based on the stats that we have, almost all countries that implement sex education, their rate of pregnancy is actually increasing. Okay, so now, as time is up a minute, I would like to reaffirm our case. Sex education should not and must not be made compulsory in secondary schools because teenage students will be using the information learned in a wrong way. Furthermore, the cost of having a standard subject does not justify the motion. Does not justify the intent, The motion proposed today must not be passed in Parliament. With that, I raise my case.